Okay, welcome to Firefighting Today, the weekly roundtable show. We talk about all sorts of stuff firefighting related. Tonight we're going to talk about some issues maybe with a new member or maybe a member that's even been on a few years that think they have more experience than they do, or certainly are behaving like they have more experience than they do. So that's our topic for tonight. We're going to talk with the panel and see what they have to say about it. If you're watching us live on YouTube, we would love to have you leave a YouTube comment, or if you are live tweeting tonight, if you use the hashtag FFT, Firefighting Today Rookie, all strung together. FFT Rookie is what we called it for tonight, and we'll get started. So you can leave comments mostly anywhere, and we'll try to interact with you here with the panel. So let's get started. Adam, well, first of all, I'll introduce myself. Peter Lamb. I'm the author of PeteLamb.com, and I'm the host of the Firefighter Training Podcast. Adam, a little bit about yourself.
Adam Ganoy from Kellogg, Iowa. Volunteer for the Kellogg Township Fire Department, captain and head of the junior fire program.
Excellent. Charlie.
Charlie Hall, Deputy Chief, TF Green Airport, Fire Rescue here in Providence, Rhode Island.
Excellent. Ethan.
Ethan Bansek, student of the trade, coming from Lorain, Ohio.
Okay. And Frank. Frank, you're muted. You're muted, Frank. There you go.
Frank Blackley, Wilmington, North Carolina Fire Department.
Okay. Jim.
Jim Murphy, retired Orange County Fire Rescue, Chief of Training with Simges here from Melbourne Beach, Florida.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. And Zach, let me see if you got any audio, Zach. Got some, Zach's having some trouble, so we're going to bypass him for a second, and we'll come back to him as he pipes in. So in a Twitter conversation, if you will, if you can call that a conversation, the comment was, what do I do with a member who has been on a short period of time but acting much like he's got many more years on the job? So this could be a rookie. This could be somebody who's got 5 years acting like they have 20. It really doesn't have to be the rookie. Real quick, going down the panel, I will tell you in my tenure, I have experienced that. I have experienced it, and I can probably tell you with a straight face, I think I probably was that guy at some point in my career. So I can speak freely. I think the statute of limitations is out on that. So I think I can speak about it. But you know, what do we do about that? How do we help a department? I guess the first question is, Adam, have you experienced that within your department? And you know, obviously we're not naming names here, but is that something you've seen in your department that has occurred?
Yes, sir, I have. Seen it with a couple of members on our department. So yeah.
Are they always new guys, Adam, or is it some number of years?
Yeah, no, it's the new guys that we get that come on. I've seen a lot with the newer members and a lot with the younger members that get on.
Okay, so it's kind of a young versus old. Charlie, your thoughts? I'm sure you must have run into this both as a company officer and as a chief officer. What can you tell me about it? Has it happened? And you know, we'll get into what to do about it in a minute.
Oh, sure, it's happened numerous times. As a peer firefighter, I saw individuals such as that become semi-ostracized from the crew to the point where they ended up transferring out. And as we all know, you don't fix the trouble by transferring it, because you're just sending it someplace else. As an officer, the responsibility was a little different, and I tried to take it upon myself to counsel several individuals, some with a modicum of success, and other times it was like talking to a cinder block.
Yeah, all right, so we'll talk about that, because the transfer away or the ostracizing is something that, listen, I'll be frank with you. I mean, we've seen it done. We've watched it happen. That may not be our best solution, obviously.
No,
so
not at all. Not at all.
We'll hopefully come up with some solutions. Ethan, you've heard about this in the past. You're pretty well read. What are you hearing about this? Is it a common problem? Is it something we just dreamed up, or do you hear about it?
No, I definitely think it's a common problem. Again, like Adam said, I'm thinking, in just my own opinion, that it may just be the newer guys.
Okay. Okay, it could be the newer guys. The reason I brought up the fact I've actually seen it with some, 5-year, 6-year people walking around like they're veterans. So it can go beyond the rookie, I think, in some cases, or at least I've seen that experience. Frank, what do you think? Is this a real life problem? Does it occur? And we'll talk about how to deal with it. But right now, does it occur? Have you witnessed it? Have you seen it?
Oh, sure. I think that anytime that somebody gets in a department and you may send them outside for training and they get new knowledge and they come back and they feel like they probably know more than they actually do, and it can present a problem. And maybe if you put them, obviously we're a career department, so if you're putting them with a good company officer, they can maybe help solve some of those problems. But a lot of it's got to do with the individual. Yeah,
it is an individual situation. Jim, you've been around for 10 or 15 minutes. You want to tell us, is this a real life problem? Have you seen it? What are you thinking?
It's definitely a real life problem, and I've seen it many times from newer members to those with you mentioned that 5 to 7 year mark, and even higher experience levels. It sometimes takes a good old dose of humility, and then understanding the difference between knowledge and competency. A lot of people can go to, as Frank was saying earlier, to a class or a course and get knowledge, but does that translate to competency in the field?
Yeah, so, okay, I got a lot of book knowledge. Can I actually perform the task when the doing is going on? Right. All right, so, well, Charlie kind of alluded to a couple things, right? It's the company blanket party, right? We can just ostracize this guy or gal or whatever and kind of segregate him or whatever. I guess one of the first things that comes to mind, and I've seen this, I've experienced this, I got a company officer come into my office and say, hey, Chief, the new guy's not working out. What's going on? Well, he doesn't fit in. He thinks he's been here 20 years, blah, 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 blah. My first question was, did you tell him? And quite frankly, that's where we fall down on the job, because nobody wants to have that difficult conversation. We told him to shut up. We fixed him at the kitchen table. We did whatever, those kinds of things. But the fact of the matter is, did you really have that conversation with the member? Because sometimes in a firehouse can, quite frankly, be a difficult place. I don't know. Adam, I guess my question is, just before I get to you, Adam, Zach, are you back with us? Have you got audio now?
I do. I got on my phone. Computer wasn't working.
Perfect. So we'll just work you into the round table in just a second here. Problem. So we'll do that. So Adam, what is the story? Do you find that somebody has not spoken to this member or spoken frankly? Not in shaded tones, not in innuendos, not in gossip, but has somebody actually spoken to the member? Adam, what are you thinking?
No. I've brought it up before, and they just kind of, gets kind of blown off. So no, it's never been spoken to the member whatsoever when they get on and think they know everything there is to know about it.
Yeah, what happens is, and what I found is, they don't have any problem talking about the member and this behavior, but nobody actually wants to sit down and talk to the member themselves. And I think that's an interesting, that's our first problem. I guess if I had to define this problem, I would say that's our first problem that comes to mind, is you got to have a discussion. We'll frame what that discussion really looks like in a couple of minutes. Zach, why don't you give us a quick introduction, and if you experience this new person who thinks they got more experience problem, is that something that's occurred? Leave the names out of it, will you?
No problem. I'm Zach Miller. I work for Washington Township Fire Department here in Mansfield, Ohio. Yeah, I'd say we have those issues. I think every department probably has the issues of getting a new guy, and that guy knows everything. It's not every new person. A lot of the guys are definitely willing to learn, but I think every department probably runs into it at one time.
All right, good. We'll get into what we do about that. Robert, do I call you Robert or Bob? What do you want to go by?
You can call me Rob.
All right, Rob. A quick introduction, and what's the story? Have you seen this in your career? The younger member who thinks or believes they have more experience than they actually do.
Yeah, we live it every day.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our guys 5 years younger, you know, they go to a fire every once in a while. They watch a couple videos on YouTube, and they think they know it all.
Yeah, yeah. I think YouTube has done that. As you know, there is a bunch of stuff running around the internet called what is it? Kicks, right? It's a keyboard incident commander. Everybody thinks they know how to fight a fire from the keyboard. So I think really the first thing is a direct conversation. Somebody well, it can be peer to peer. It could be another firefighter. If it is the right firefighter, because we're dealing with people here. This problem of a new person thinking they know more than they do is a people problem. This is not a performance problem, really. It's a people problem at its root. It could be a performance problem as we talk about the competency. But what do you think that conversation goes like? Does anybody want to jump on that one? Anybody? I won't go in order. Anybody want to tackle that one?
Pete, I will.
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
I think we all have to acknowledge that within the rank structure in our service, there's the recognized ranks by promotion, and there's also the unofficial leaders, if you will. And in my experience, I have seen the unofficial leader, whether it be a senior man on the shift or somebody that's just acknowledged and has the knowledge and the respect of his peers, and that would be the guy that perhaps would take this individual aside and have the conversation with him, and don't mince any words. I never elected myself the unofficial leader, but I have had this conversation with a couple of people in my time, and I basically started it out with very bluntly, you know, you're not making any friends around here with your attitude, and to each individual that I ever said that, but maybe it's been 3 times in my career, they all said, "What do you mean by that?" And I told them, and it made it okay for a while, but you know, that behavior is ingrained, and sometimes they bring it with them. As a division of training, and in the division of training, I had a cadre of instructors, and I myself was the deputy chief of the division of training back in the day, and I made it a point to be very, very strict with the trainees and to tell them right off the bat the things we've discussed before. It's just show up, shut up, and do your job.
All right. Is that the answer still today, Charlie? I agree with you. I was with no deference to Zach. My answer was shut up and ride backwards. Zach, that wasn't a cheap shot either. I used to say that all the time.
No, but there is something to that. Until you learn how to cook the meal, just eat what's put in front of you, and even make believe you enjoy it.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking, and you and I come from the same cloth, Charlie. But I think today there may be some difference with the candidate that we're getting, where that may not be the acceptable answer anymore. I'm not sure.
We are definitely getting people that of a higher educational level, people that have whose life's experiences perhaps might be, at least in their eyes, extensive. But and, you know, when you said something a little while ago about the 5-year guy who thinks he's been on a long time, you take a 5-year guy in an engine, a truck company that's rolling out 3,000 or 4,000 times a year and catching a couple hundred working fires. You know what? That 5-year guy is a veteran. As opposed to the 25-year-old guy that 25-year guy that goes and hides at an engine company that does 300 or 400 runs a year, and he thinks he's a fireman. You know, so there is a difference there.
Yeah, I think experience, the size of the department, all leads down a path. But I think I don't know, Rob. What are you thinking about? What does that conversation sound like with this guy? You're a deputy chief, from a chief officer position. What does this conversation sound like when you're talking to this member?
When you're talking to someone with what specifically? That's got a little bit of
the member who's been on a few years, but really is behaving in such a way like they're a seasoned veteran.
You know, we have a conversation with them that basically tell them, you know, a lot of these guys, especially on my side, from the volunteer side, I come from a very busy department, so. But some of these guys, you know, they're floaters. They're in today, they're out tomorrow. You know, they come back, they Monday morning quarterback everything that they see. So eventually, I'll sit down with them and I'll tell them, I'll pull them off on the side and like, look, guys, you know, guy, you don't have 5 years, you got 1 year 5 times. And sometimes it sinks in. They realize is, you know what, you don't have as much experience as you really think you do. And you can put them in a little bit of uncomfortable spot sometimes in a training where you make them take the officer spot. And eventually they'll learn, you know what, maybe I have to learn this. Okay, maybe I went a little too fast. Maybe I got to take a step back. There's ways to talk to them. But on the opposite end of that, some of these guys will never, they think they know it all. It can go either way. But you have to, from my point as a chief, I have to go out of my way and try to make these guys, because I think I look at it like I rescue them. You know, it's I can steer them back on track where, you know, they'll become a productive guy eventually. They got to lose the attitude.
All right. Do you think that we as older folks in the business are we challenged? As I said, I mean, I'm being very frank with you. I think I was this new guy at one point in my first department. I think I was the new smart ass, if you will, for lack of a better term. And I wonder if, is it just generational, or does every, you know, we're looking at new guys coming in. When we got in, was there some old guy looking at us saying, look at this new guy? I think that there will always be a challenge between the young and the old in some ways. Frank, how do you see the conversation going with this member that may be straying out of line a little bit?
I guess going back to what I first started talking about was hopefully a more seasoned company officer that has probably got more tact than some people may, because they've taken offense to what that person is being told and how they're being told. As you know now, we've got a completely different type of firefighter that may be joining our ranks, and how do you deal with those, because I guess they've been raised differently. And I can think back in my career where I've seen the fire service go, especially from a technology point of view, that now it's instantaneous. They want everything right now, and that doesn't always happen. So I think, you know, having that conversation with them, I think it's got to be by someone that can tactfully tell them, and hopefully they'll be able to listen, because a lot of times, you know, as some of the other ones have already said, is that they've already got their mind made up and they already know it all, and it's going to be difficult because we always want to be everybody's buddy, and you know, that can't happen.
No, well said, well said. You know, the other thing that we're going to talk about here, and it's a real life, we don't have to love this, but it is real life. If you ostracize this member today, and I'll use Charlie's word, but because I think it is probably one of the better ones, is, you know, if you ostracize a member now, you know, 3 weeks from today, you're going to be in the personnel director's office in a career department looking at a harassment charge because it's a hostile work environment.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have a different situation. This is a little bit. I think the environment has changed a little bit. Let's take a question from the audience. Johnny's with us. Johnny, I appreciate you being with us again tonight. I agree with the guys with 5 years on or so and a few jobs under their belt. Typically, at least around here, they act like they've been there and done that. I understand that it's about constantly staying on top of the new trends in the service. And I gotta read this from here. I apologize. And you never know it all. But at what point is a guy considered a seasoned vet? We have had a mass exodus of our older experienced members, with guys who have been with 10 to 12 years being our senior guys now. Just wondering at what point was some. So when do you get, Johnny's, the crux of his point is, when do you get to be a senior guy? And I guess, Johnny, what I would answer, and I'll look for somebody else, I think what Charlie said is, what is your experience level with your training and education? What level are you at? And I think it's based on your experience level in consideration with the members you are next to. For example, on the panel tonight, just real quickly, Rob, how many runs does your department do annually?
Just about 3,000.
Adam, how many runs do you do annually?
If we're lucky, 100.
Okay, so you can't compare those two guys outside of their departments. You can't compare an Adam guy with a Rob guy, but you can compare Rob's guys within their own department. So I think that's part of your answer, Johnny, for sure. And Lane, thanks for being with us tonight. I appreciate it. We've got a name for these guys on my department. We call them 221s, 2 fires, 2 tattoos, and 1 leather helmet. The reference being if they got those things, they think they're salty. So 221. I didn't have that one in my vocabulary, but I'll throw that down. So 2 fires, 2 tattoos, and a leather helmet. And so there's your answer, Johnny. That's what makes you salty. What else? Zach, you're an officer, I think, in your job right now, in your Raleigh job. How do you have this conversation with this member? What do you do? The guy comes to you. One of the firefighters comes to you and says, "Hey, Lou, you got to fix this." How's that conversation go?
Well, the thing for me that sucks is that I am new at it. I am the 5-year guy. I got promoted this past year, and everybody, for the most part, has more experience than I do. We do about 625 calls a year. We might get a handful of working fires. We've had 1 so far in the past year. I haven't had to run into that yet. We do definitely have, even on our management side, we do have, a couple guys that don't have a lot of experience, but I'm one of them, and I guess the only thing I've been trying to do is keep up with my training, and social media and the fire service has really helped me with that. I think if we keep up with our training, that'll help us with not having the experience on the fire ground that the guy that's been doing it for 20 years does.
Yeah, I think the training certainly will enhance your experience. It'll never replace it, but it'll
definitely
enhance it. And I think that's the next best thing. Is it a problem? Is this problem, and I'm going to you with this one, Jim, little gray hair wisdom here I'm looking for, Jim, is this problem the expectations? Can you have a conversation with this member about expectations? His expectations or her expectations versus the expectations of the organization. Can you try to bring that into the conversation to shade this a little bit? Jim, what are you thinking?
Absolutely, you can, Chief, and should. It's kind of a paradox here, because is this member's behavior because they think they know it all, or has this member been ostracized by saying, "You're a rookie, you know nothing"? So has this new person been embraced, encouraged, mentored, if you will, along the way? So I think, first of all, you have to identify why the behavior is occurring, and then maybe get a second set of eyeballs on it. Another officer observe the behavior as well, and then put together an incident action plan.
Okay, a couple of good things you said there, Jim, and that is this: did we create this? Did we create this monster? And do some departments actually create the monster? In some cases, might be worth a conversation, no question. The other one is, I like this conversation as well. These things are not going to resolve in the next 5 minutes. Getting a second set of eyes on this. Maybe you're just not clicking with this member. Maybe there is a personality issue. Maybe it's something you're not seeing that you should be seeing, and I think that has a possibility of being brought into the conversation. How do we get this person to come around? We haven't had the hard discussion yet. Anybody want to dive in? Rob, what are you thinking? How do we get them? We can use brute force in a baseball bat. I got that. I've done that, tried that. I got the T-shirt.
Take them to the woodshed, is like we used to say.
Yeah. Take them out to the woodshed. I want to see you behind the station. Yeah, okay, but in lieu of that,
there's always the bucket.
Right.
The bucket when they walk in, the clothes in the freezer. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Peer pressure is a wonderful thing.
It could be a whole nother roundtable, but yeah. So what do we do? So in your department, what happens to these members? Do they just go away? Do we accept them? Do we ignore them? What happens to these members, Rob?
Well, normally if somebody comes to me, I automatically put it back on the company officer. It's a lieutenant or a captain problem. If you can't get to it, then I'll have a conversation. But, we have to have a paper trail where I guess we would call it a corrective interview. And we'll sit down with somebody, and it's always, so we'll use myself as an example. It's myself, the individual, and a third party. And it's a formal interview. If it has to get to that, it's a formal corrective interview, and we'll even as so far as to put something in their file, where if this goes over a period of time, it's going to become a problem. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, it's never come to that. Normally, most people see the light at the end of the tunnel eventually.
I guess I kind of described it's sort of like pornography. I never really said what we were talking about other than to do it in broad terms, but we all think we're doing it. What type of behavior, Rob? Now, you took a pretty strong step here, and I'm not saying I disagree. I like it. You're taking a corrective action. But what sort of behavior would it be? Is it just him mouthing off or her mouthing off at the kitchen table? What sort of behavior would take it to this level, do you think? Anybody can answer.
It's got to come from multiple sources, and typically in the form of a formal complaint. If we have a pretty strong sexual harassment policy, we have a very strong violence in the workplace policy, and if somebody's mouthing off, and it becomes a problem where people feel uncomfortable. And if somebody makes a formal complaint to me as a chief, I have to act on that. And basically, it'll end at the interview. Most people, like I said, it never goes past one speaking to. I mean, we have our chronic, we'll call them habitual problems, but it's small stuff. Oh, I saw somebody driving too fast to the firehouse. For me, as a chief, I have to be able to divulge if it's a personality problem where it's really not a problem, it's you just happen not to like somebody and you pitch and bitch against them, or it's a legitimate issue that needs to get taken care of.
Okay, and that's general. Those are violations of rules, regulations, and infractions. What about this person who has the bad attitude? Let me ask you this. Let me throw this out. Would speaking to this person, and so they have technical knowledge, they know how to use a line, they know how to climb a ladder. Would it help this person to understand where they came from in the first place? For example, do you train routinely on the history of your fire department? Do you expose these younger members who maybe have a sense of entitlement? Do you explain to them what the job was like years ago and help them build some respect and understanding of what the members before went through? Does that make any sense? Could that help you in this problem? Is anybody doing that?
Our department was started in 1947, and we're very fortunate enough to have a charter member still active on the rolls. And, very commonly, as a chief, when I speak before the department at a function or something else, I'll constantly refer to the senior members of the department, because if it wasn't for them and the sacrifices they made and what they went through, there's no point. We wouldn't be standing here right now.
Right, and to my point, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is it sometimes that these new members come into an organization just, hey, I'm going to join the volunteer organization next week, or I'm going to join the career department next week, and they really don't have an understanding of where the place came from.
Or what we do.
Or what we do. Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly.
From, volunteer fire departments have a stigma, and it's up to us to overcome the stigma. And for me, coming from a very busy department, people think they come to the firehouse to hang out.
Right.
And, very quickly they learn that, we have a lot of work to do. And either you're going to pitch in and be part of it, or you're going to get tossed off to the side. And the people that get tossed off to the side, you will see start to fade away eventually. And that's my experience. Yep. We have very, very few. I'm sure everybody here tonight has heard the knife and forker. We have very few knife and forkers.
Right, right. All right, Adam, do you do anything with the departmental history when a new member comes on? Is that something you talk about? Do they have any clue of where they've been, the people that worked before?
No, we don't. And to be honest with you, I don't even know our department history. I don't even know when it was established or anything like that. I've never seen any history on our department.
Well, there you go. There's your homework assignment. You can't come on a Sunday night without getting homework. Charlie, do you do anything with departmental history? Where did you come from? Where did you start? Set the path for these new folks.
Well, I think it's important that they understand the history that they're going to help to shape from that point forward. They need to know, and I believe Rob said it. They need to know about the people who went before them and what they did and what they accomplished, and they need to have a respect and an appreciation for those individuals, because as we all know, guys, none of us walked into the job and had everything handed to us. It takes a lot to maintain today what we currently have, and I believe that has to be impressed upon these individuals. They are there to do a job. I'm one of those people that believes in a single act of heroism for every firefighter. The day he puts his right hand up and agrees to do the job, the rest of it's the job. And I don't mean to slight anybody that may be Medal of Honor winners or whatever, because God bless you, you deserve them. But I think it's important. Like in my place, I'll tell this kid tomorrow, right from the get-go. We were established in 1949. We have. I tell him how the job works, what's expected of him, and I believe you said it, Chief, and I think it's a great idea. I would like to know what his expectations are. When he walks through the door. Now we're a very, very small department. We've been a career department since we were established, and the level of manning has just gone down over the years, unfortunately. So in a situation like that, I'm going to impress upon this kid how important it is for him to be part of the team, because the team is pretty small.
Yeah, I think team is a big word. I think that's when we're talking about this member who maybe is thinking they're better than they are. Team is the word that came up. I'm glad you threw that out there. Ethan, you've been listening patiently. Any comments, suggestions about any of the stuff you heard so far?
No, I just definitely think if you don't have something in place to teach your new members about history, you definitely need to do that, because that's a key piece, like the rest of you guys said.
Yeah, I think it is important. Frank, we're talking about team. We're talking about, did we create this situation to begin with? We're talking about expectations. What do you want to add? Anything you want to chime in with?
I started as a volunteer when I was still in high school, so I've been through that whole process. And when you're trying to get volunteers, it's like whoever wanted to join, could join, and they go through the probationary period and all that. But obviously, working for the city of Wilmington, we have a little bit easier. Well, I wouldn't say easier, but I have a more structured process of when you hire someone. And one of the things that we've been able to do is really trying to find out whether those persons' values match our values. And I've talked about this before on some of the other broadcasts, but getting the right person in the job to begin with has helped us tremendously, and trying to make sure that who we do hire is much better than we used to. I mean, we used to hire people that had some certifications, and what we found out is that just because they had a certification doesn't necessarily mean they were a good firefighter.
Right, right. Yeah, I did a whole podcast episode on is it a good fit? Just because you're certified firefighter 1, 2 doesn't mean you're a good fit with the organization. Jim, how does this? What do you got to add here as we're going through this?
Well, I agree with what Charlie teach department, but I would take it a step further, and we did teach fire department culture. It's a whole different animal when guys and gals are living together 24 hours a day every third day. Having said that, it's important that we make sure that this issue didn't come up because of I think I know more than you, but we didn't, like you said earlier, create the monster by treating a new person like a second-class citizen. So it has to be a blending of the culture, bringing them in, taking them under your wing. Now, there are people that just aren't cut out for the fire service, and we have that 1-year window of probation to take care of that issue. And most times that resolves the issue.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's a good idea. Talking about training the culture, we'll get to that. Rob, let me skip you for a second and go over to Zach. Zach, what do you got? You want to add anything to where we've been here? Do you teach the new people your culture, your training, your history? Do you teach any of that when a new member comes in?
No, we don't have anything in place for that, and actually talking about it tonight, I think that might be one of the things I work on. I didn't really do a ton of research until we were getting ready for promotional exams and knew that was going to be some of the stuff that was on there, and I had to do my own research, talking to people and looking at pictures from around the house and doing a little research on old chiefs. We actually did have a couple of people that did a history of the department chiefs and stuff, so that helped out in that aspect. But no, other than just sitting around the kitchen table and talking to people about the good old days and all the calls they used to go on that were crazy when they didn't have as much equipment or older equipment that we don't have now. But a lot of the new people, we don't hire a bunch. We got a roster of about 40. Right now it's about 35, and I'd say probably half of those know a little bit about the history, but other than that, people just get on, come on calls, and then from there, they kind of dwindle down, and you see a lot of people go through the spurt of, going on a bunch of calls and then not coming on calls. And I think if people realize the history and what they used to run with and what we have now, they'd probably be really grateful and maybe willing to do more work.
Yeah, and I also think that the history takes them into some of the values of those members, right? As we speak to our older members, they had different values than we do now. Mine was very simple here. I mean, we did, at the Fire Academy, we used to teach history and traditions and a whole bunch of stuff like that. In our department locally, where I just left, is we would actually bring in, during their orientation of the recruit career firefighters, we would bring in a couple of our older retired guys, and we would spend the morning with them, and they would go through some of the things that they went through and how it was and what it worked. And I like what you said, Zach. It's not all about, hey, we got to go back to the good old days, because that's not really where I want to go. But I think that there does need some appreciation. We're trying to help somebody who might watch this video later and say, what can you do? So what we've said so far, just a quick recap, find out what expectations are, what's the member's expectations, what's the department's. Have the conversation with the member. Too often these things fester around the kitchen table. Sally's not working out, Johnny's not working out, whatever it happens to be, and it's all gossip, and no one has actually talked to the member. So do that. Have an experienced officer or seasoned officer mentor the person. That's another thing we've talked about tonight, another positive action. Now, we're talking about this member that thinks they're smarter or has more experience than the other. Let me just pose a question. Suppose they're right. Suppose they are capable and maybe in a better position than some of the senior members. What then? Suppose this member is exhibiting a behavior that he's smarter than he is. And you know, to Robert's point, well, let's put him in the training building or whatever, and this person is as good as they say. What now?
Chief, I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. I think a chief, I think all officers should be talent scouts. And if there is someone that either is or thinks they're smarter than the average Joe and has something to offer, then have them teach it. Have them train, have them master, have them mentor. Now, if it's done with arrogance and they're cocky and they have an attitude problem, that's a whole different issue. But it just may very well be that, God forbid, Jim Murphy may learn something from a rookie.
Right. And I guess that's what I was afraid of is, do we as senior members take offense at somebody before we get that second set of eyes or before we get that second opinion? Rob, what are you thinking?
I agree. Being from Long Island, we have a lot of FDNY guys. And we'll get somebody who just comes in the department. Sometimes they make it known very quickly. Hey, you know what? I'm with X company or I'm with Y company. And a lot of times they don't say a word. And then eventually down the line, they'll be like, well, you know, I'm captain of 104 truck or whatever it is. And we had a guy who came from a very busy FDNY ladder company in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And, you know, he was the most unassuming guy ever. And he never said a word. And then, but he was, you know, he had a Proby shield on and everything. And he would be like, well, that's not really the way you want to force the door. You should try this. And eventually you start to figure it out and you start asking questions and he'd be like, yeah, you know, that's what I do, blah, blah, blah. And then it's up to you because you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. Well, you know what? You have to harness his knowledge. And all of a sudden he might have 3 weeks in the department and everybody needs to put that aside because he only has 3 weeks with you, but he's been with another department for 27 years and he has a hell of a lot of experience that he can share with you. So you need to listen to that, and you need to learn from it.
Yeah, no, good point. And you know, it does bear mention here. This content can be viewed anytime. Somebody's going to watch this YouTube video later. But at the mention of Rob talking about FDNY, just a line of duty death last evening on a member, a lieutenant, who actually made a rescue 13 days ago. He made a rescue of a child 13 days ago. It was a line of duty death last night in an apartment fire. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the friends and families of FDNY members, and certainly this member's family. We should never forget what's happened. But Zach, what do you do if this younger member is smarter? Now, Robert's example was an extreme one. You know, an FDNY member sneaks onto your department. That's not happening everywhere. Long Island, it is fairly common, quite frankly. But Zach, what do you do when you find out this smart alecky member actually can perform all of the things they're talking about? What then?
I haven't really ran into that. I guess my personal experience, I don't know that people would take me as knowing it all because I don't, and I'll be the first one to admit that. And I guess one of my big roles when I got promoted was coming up with trainings, and I'm trying to implement taking everybody's ideas and making those members speak out if they have a better idea. And we're getting the older members to speak out and the new members saying, hey, you know, I was just in fire school. What if we did it this way? A lot of the guys that we have learned from IFSTA 3 and 4, and now, you know, 5 and 6, I think they're teaching 6 now here in Ohio, and, you know, things are they're different. And for those guys coming back from school, being able to bring back something I think's nice. And I guess it's the hardest thing is getting out of the, well, we've always done it this way. And that's the thing that's getting me the most, is trying to get that mindset out that, you know, look, there is new stuff, and the new stuff is research behind it, and I don't know the best way to implement that other than notifying the people about the new information. I don't know if that kind of goes along with what you're talking about or not.
Sure, that's valuable. Frank, let me ask you a tough question, directed question to you, Frank. Does our rank structure inhibit the influx of ideas from a newer member because they're the new person? Does the rank structure, does the paramilitary organization stifle that in some ways, or at least magnify the challenge we're speaking about tonight?
I'm sure it does to a certain extent. I mean, anytime, I think if I'm going to somewhere new, I may not necessarily be the one that's going to speak out about something unless I'm really very familiar with what is the situation. So I'm sure it does, and I think, and Jim could probably chime in on this too because of his long service career. He's seen a lot of changes like I have. Is that some of the structure has changed. I mean, I think there's a whole new avenue, at least in our department, of being able to express some of your opinions and talk about some of the things that we can change.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we have. I think it has changed a little bit. Ethan, what do you think about what we're saying? And you're an interesting study, Ethan, because you are going to be this new guy at some point. How do you think this might have an impact on you as you begin to get involved with the department? Tough question, if you don't mind.
Well, I definitely think that.
Well, that was a tough question. We tossed him. He'll come back. We'll get back to him, I'm sure. He's got an opinion. Charlie, what do you think? Does the rank structure inhibit, and we didn't ask you about this, suppose this new person comes up a little bit arrogant, a little more arrogant than they should be, but in fact you test them a little bit, and they can do what they say. Now what? How does that change your perspective?
Well, that's the individual. Then that's the individual that perhaps really needs to be taken aside and told or presented that you're bringing a skill set to us, and you're opening another dimension of with your abilities, and we could use you in training. We could use you to be groomed for a possible leadership position down the road. The problem you've got is with your attitude and the way you present yourself. I don't think because, and I found it to be rare, that the person that does talk the talk and walk the walk, but when you do get that person, it doesn't excuse their abilities. Their accelerated competence and their accelerated abilities does not excuse their behavior. So I think even though they do know, they can talk, they can walk the walk, that's great, but it doesn't excuse their behavior, and I still think it needs to be dealt with.
Great point, Charlie. So because they're technically competent, because they're proficient, knowledge, skills, and abilities are maybe superior or at least equal to the people that we're comparing them to, if their attitude is not that of a team player, they're still a detriment to the department or to their shift, to company, or what have you. I think that's a good point. I don't think I disagree with that at all.
And if I may take it one step further, Pete, those that do fall into that small category, in my experience, and I maybe have run across one, maybe two, in 39 years on the job, and I can tell you without fail, that was the individual that I would see freelancing at a fire. Everybody else wasn't moving fast enough, wasn't doing it his way, wasn't doing it the way that he wanted it to be done. And that's got to be honest. You've got to let somebody, you've got to have that talk with that individual. This is not an independent sport. This is a team sport, and we all have to read from the same playbook.
Yeah.
I'm glad he brought that up.
Why is that, Zach? Go ahead, jump in.
I think what we've been talking about is the guy that thinks he knows it all, and he might, but the freelancing issue I think definitely needed brought up. I think that can be one of the things that's most detrimental to us on the fire ground, and a lot of the time that's when somebody's going to get hurt, is if they're freelancing, not doing what the officer asked them to do, and bottom line, if I got a chief officer telling me to do something, I'm going to do it because he told me to do it. If it's unsafe, that's a different story. But the freelancing issue, I think, is going to get a lot of guys hurt. And I know our department, we're trying to do our best to, and I think since I got promoted, I think that's been one of the things. The one fire we did go on, we didn't have anybody freelancing. Everybody knew what job they were going to be doing when we got off the truck. And I think that was, a step in the right direction of not having people that didn't know what they were going to be doing, and we didn't have people that knew what they should have been doing but were freelancing.
Yeah, no, and again, size of department is relevant here. I think size of department is going to magnify or you can accept some things. We're up here in Massachusetts, the city of Boston, 1,600 personnel thereabouts. They can make some things disappear because there is so much manpower and so much. There are different levels of which things we're talking about tonight might apply in your own department. Now, Ethan, I asked you one tough question and you dove out on us. I don't know what that's about. We'll have a talk about that later. But so what are you thinking? So you're a bright young man. You're going to come onto a department. You're going to be one of those new guys who is well-versed, well-read. What are you thinking?
Well, no, I don't know what happened here. The whole thing just went down. But, no, I think it goes back to the fact that you don't know everything about this job. There's something new coming in here every single day, every single minute. And I think the day that you do know it all is the day you need to hang the coat up and, go be the Walmart greeter or something. Because there's so much to know about this job that, we can never learn it in our lifetime, that's for sure.
Ethan, you're gonna do well, Ethan. I predict that already.
Yeah, no, that's a great attitude, and the attitude of team, right? You can't know everything about this job and try to research the things you don't know. I think is awesome. Adam, you've been quiet down there on the end. Your time is up, man. What do you got? What do you want to add to this?
No, I got to go along with what Zach was saying. I haven't really experienced with anybody that come on with experience. It's always been the guys that are coming on with no experience that, hey, I can do this, I can do that. I ran into it on a call a while back, had a member get on, and, I simply went up there, he had an air pack on, said, hey, you got experience on this? And he just gave me that snotty look and a snotty tone and said, no. It's like, what are you doing with this thing on? So I didn't say nothing to him. I pulled one of my other members off to the side that was friends with him, and I talked to him about it, and he actually went up there and actually talked to him a couple days after the run. So it's usually been with the guys that are just getting on, that have no experience at all. Right. And, comment in our chat room here, one of the members said, I think I've forgotten more than I've remembered. Yeah, I think that can be the case. Now, just go back as we begin to summarize here. Rob said something earlier. I'm going to shove this down to the captain and lieutenant, and that's typically where it goes, the company level. This is a firefighter, so it's dealt with at a company level. I'm speaking about it at a different level. Charlie's got chief experience. I have, Rob does, etc. That doesn't make it right, worse, or indifferent. We're just looking at it from a different perspective. Let me ask you this, and I'm going to run the panel. Adam, I'm going to start with you so you guys can be thinking I'm going to run up that way. Are your captains and lieutenants prepared adequately to have this conversation that we just had tonight? Expectations, history of the department, counseling to some degree, walking the line with the harassment issue, making sure the member's not ostracized. Are your captains and lieutenants prepared for that task? We just served up a big plate of chow here tonight. Are they prepared to either eat it or feed it? Adam, are your captains and lieutenants ready for this challenge to have this difficult conversation? On our department, we don't have any lieutenants. We just have two captains, myself and another fella that's a lot younger than I am. No, we aren't prepared. I'll be honest with you, we are not.
Right.
Do we sit and have the chats? Yeah, we do. Occasionally we'll sit down and pull that member off to the side and have chats, but as far as being prepared, no, we're not. We're not prepared at all.
Okay. Charlie, when you were chief, were your rank and file officers prepared to have this difficult conversation, or does their being uncomfortable lead to not having the conversation?
I think the fact that they may have been uncomfortable in that position, the conversation didn't go quite as it should. If it gets up to my level, even in my current department, then we start getting union reps involved and everybody else, and there's a formality to it. In my experience, when the line of unofficial and official is crossed, the message becomes crystal clear to the member who's the problem. So to take it back, the people I work with now, I'm going to tell you it depends on the shift. It really does. Some guys are very well prepared and will do it without compunction and are very good at it, and there are others that wouldn't know it if it walked up and slapped them in the mouth.
Yeah, no, I think that's the answer. That's my favorite chief answer, incidentally. Anytime somebody would ask me a difficult question on the job, I would say something like, "Yeah, it depends on the shift."
But it's true, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. Frank, as we begin to summarize, are the captains and lieutenants ready to have this difficult conversation with a member who may be acting sort of out of their years, out of their scope? Are your captains and lieutenants prepared for this conversation?
Some may be, and obviously some are not. We've got a fairly young department now, so we've got lots of new company officers that are filling roles, and really, with probably the last 4 to 5 years, we've really done a lot more work. We're trying to with the company officers to, through in-service training, we take them off shift for 2 days once a year, and basically run them through the in-service. And a lot of that has got to do with performance evaluations, legal aspects, the whole gamut, leadership, all of that, and trying to instill in them that they are a company officer and they need to make decisions. And sometimes those decisions are not easy, and sometimes having to deal with a situation like this is going to obviously cause some difficulty with them, and yes, maybe even a fear because they're having to deal with an employee, which is never any fun. So I think like most departments, you've got some people that are good at it and some people that are they're leery and afraid to do so.
Yep, absolutely. Jim, what's your thought? Are the fire service, and you can speak a little more globally, you're out on the road teaching and stuff, is the fire service, the company officer, ready for these unpleasant decisions, conversations?
Well, I hate to go back to that same word, Chief, but it does depend. Depends on, again, you mentioned shifts, but it depends upon the personnel of the officer and their training and background. The issue at hand, is it a personality issue or is it a bad employee? So that has to all be identified. With regard to what we talked about earlier, skills versus knowledge, someone like Ethan with his personal skills and humility, I would hire in a heartbeat. There are people with probably more experience that he could blow out of the water. Education is great, but the prisons are full of people with master's degrees and PhDs. So does that knowledge translate to competency? And then back to the captains and the officers, are we training them how to deal with personnel issues?
Yeah, I think that's a gap. That's kind of my pet peeve, so we'll get there. Robert, as we begin to summarize, are your company offices, I mean, that's where you said, and I agree with your position wholeheartedly, that's where this problem belongs. Are they prepared for that conversation? What are you thinking?
Yes and no. We have some younger officers who unfortunately don't have the quote-unquote life experience to deal with some of these problems that a more seasoned, not necessarily on the fire or service-wise, a more older gentleman or woman might have more of an ability to deal with that. We're actually in the process right now of planning out more of formal officer training, because I can't expect you to do a job that I don't train you for. So just because you raise your right hand and say, I take the oath of lieutenant or captain, I can't throw all of that stuff on you without giving you the proper training. So we're actually looking out to, and it's not to implement more of a leadership and a management style training class for some of our up-and-coming and current officers. That has nothing to do with tactics or firematics in any sense of the word, but when you become an officer, a lieutenant, a captain, and eventually chief, you have more of that. You have that work relationship where you have to be able to put aside your friendship. Because we spend a lot of time together, and let's call spade spade. We're all friends, and you hate to go after one of your friends where you may let them slide and actually create more of a problem. So that's a skill that I think needs to be taught, needs to be learned, and needs to be implemented, especially today.
Thanks. Good stuff, Robert. Listen, I might know a guy. If you're interested in some leadership training, I might know a guy. It was just a shameless plug. That's all right. Zach, you are the new officer. Are you ready?
I am.
Are you ready for this kind of conversation that we waded into tonight? Do you think you're ready? And if not, what are you going to do to kind of make yourself ready?
I feel like I'm partially ready, I guess. I watch my dad. He owns 2 pizza shops. He has worked his ass off, and I've seen him deal with the issues in his store, which, going off of what Rob was talking about, it's not a fire service thing. It's it's a management thing, and my department, we need to set up a better mentoring program, and especially for the new officers. We got 4 new officers. We got 1 new captain and 3 new lieutenants, and we're all under the age of 30. We don't, like Rob was saying, we don't have the life experience. I would say, an advantage after watching my dad deal with the employee issues that he has, but am I comfortable with it? No. Do I know that's part of my job? Yes, but it does need talked about, and it's not being done in my department, and after talking here, it's something I should probably bring up. They always say, yeah, we'll have one of the older guys mentor you, but it hasn't happened, and there already has been some issues, me being the lieutenant, that I probably should have done a better job at talking to the person, and I didn't, because I didn't want to stir I didn't want to stir the pot and piss anybody off. But when it comes down to it, that's part of my job, and to make things run, sometimes you're going to piss people off. If you're not trained to do it the way the department wants you to, it could end up being a bad thing.
Right. Well, listen, a little disclaimer. I won't share any tales out of school, but I had the opportunity to share some time with Zach a week or so ago. He's got a value system that does prepare him. So when he says he's partially prepared, he's fibbing. He's more than partially prepared. He's got a pretty good value system. And
I appreciate that.
Good background. So with that, I think the bewitching hour is upon us. We would ask you to join us here again next Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We talk about a bunch of stuff. Anybody got any topics for the panel that you'd like to have brought up, please feel free to share them. I'd be happy to talk about them on a future episode. If you think you want to share this with other folks, you see it up there on screen. Go to firefightingtoday.com, and you can look at all of our previews of past shows and stuff that's up there, and rewatch this again and again. So with that, we'll see you next week.